And we're live with Transform Your Relationships Live. I'm Laura Rubinstein here with the awesome and amazing Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. Hi, Rhoberta.
Hello, Laura. What a topic we have today. My goodness.
Pretty
You know,
sobering.
well, it's something important to know that people may not know. And it's important to recognize when things change.
Mm.
And sometimes things change without them being advertised. And that's what happened here. So that's why I suggested we talk about this, because it's something everybody needs to know, in my opinion.
Yeah, and what exactly is that?
Well, we had a shift between the Trump administration and the Obama administration in the way that we define domestic violence. And we had taken a really enlightened approach in the Obama administration, and it now covered many kinds of abuse, financial abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. Coercive control was not in the law, but it covered all the things that we talk about in coercive control. And then I think it was April 2019 that the law just quietly changed under the Trump administration. And it went back 50 years to domestic violence only being felony charges that are connected to crimes of violence.
Mm.
So domestic violence went way back to meaning you had to be physically hurt or it didn't count.
And
And
prove it, I suppose, right?
well, you've always had to prove it, but the problem being that we were just moving in a direction to say there are other kinds of abuse besides ones that leave marks on your body. And that is so true and so much more prevalent than the ones that leave marks on your body. And it is domestic violence. So people just didn't notice that shift. And, I checked this morning, Laura, and the law has not changed yet. I hope it's going to. I hope that definition will go back to the previous form, because too many people are emotionally abused, financially abused, verbally abused on a repeated basis, and it makes it untenable to stay in the relationship, and yet you can't get the court to understand the abuse.
Yeah, and that's really a shame, especially in COVID, right? We have more people together with their people who are not treating them well. And maybe they're not physically treating them well, but they're financially misusing their money. They're verbally abusing. And it sounds like it could be a really hellacious situation. And it's hard enough for people to get out. So, what do you recommend?
Well, I can't do much about the law. I know there are lots of wonderful people who are endeavoring to, but it's just important, A, for us to be aware of this, because it means that documentation of what is happening to you on a very, very daily basis, if required, is super important. And that you tell people what's happening to you, so you have corroborating people who will say, yes, this happened. But first and foremost is you have to take it really seriously. I'll give you an example. I was working with a client who fortunately now is divorced, but she had two teenagers who had special needs, and her hijackal husband, my term for these people, um, every month he gave her less money to manage the household on. And she would say, but I can't do it. And he would say, well, you're just stupid about money. So if you can't manage it, borrow it from your friends and family, because I'm not going to give you anything else. I mean, that was an untenable situation of financial abuse. There were other kinds of abuse, but there's an example that there wasn't enough money for food, there wasn't enough money to run the household, and every month there was a little bit less, and then he just used it against her and told her that she was too stupid to manage the money.
Mm, that is a horrible situation. And how do you get out of that? And what do you do next? And it's could be crazy making.
Well, it was because the beginning of that story was that at the beginning of their marriage, looking back, she realized this. He gave her the finances of the home to run, knowing that that wasn't her forte at all. And she didn't do a good job. Then he took them back, and then the abuse started because she was too stupid to manage the finances, quote unquote. And so she got browbeat every day for the use of money. And here she is trying to raise these children all these years and going to family, going to friends, having to ask, having to find ways to get food, doing all that she could possibly do, all because this man wanted ultimate control and to have one among many, but one great reason to abuse her.
And
And
then
this,
think about what that does on the person, him or herself, right? Like now you're starting to believe that stuff. You get that message more often than not of you're not good with money. You're going to live that out. It's a self-perpetuating and reinforcement system that has no win. It's really, that's really a crime.
well, it is because when somebody tells you all the time that you're too stupid to manage money, or you're foolish, or nobody else would want you, you're just lucky I keep you around because no other person would want you, you start to believe those things. And if you've had a poor background from your family of origin, it becomes even more likely that you're going to believe those things. It is devastating to a person's self-esteem and self-concept to have someone that they believe loves them or wants to believe loves them telling them these terrible things and then reinforcing it on a daily basis. You know, it happens. It happens with parents and children too. I've spoken of this maybe even here before, but certainly on my podcast. And, you know, my mother, who was very competitive with me, and I'm an only child, on a weekly basis, if not more than once a week, she would say to me, "It's a good thing you're smart, young lady, because you're fat and ugly." And, you know, it was constant. It was constant. It was constant. And I look back at photographs of myself and, you know, evidence of fat and ugly as a child? No. You know, what was this all about? You know, well, what it was about was she needed some way to dominate, some way to be right, some way to control. And that similar thing happens if, like in the case of my client, being told repeatedly how inept you are, how unable you are to manage money, how you can't be trusted with money and finances and children. Meanwhile, he does nothing to help with the children or the finances or the home. A totally confusing message.
Right. And it seems like because someone isn't able to get to their own happiness, they have to put other people in a place that's below them so they feel a little better. Is that what's going on here as a dynamic in abuse?
Well, it is the perpetuation of shame. And a person who has narcissistic, sociopathic, or psychopathic tendencies is usually a person who was gravely shamed when they're young life. So anything that could possibly contribute to even a hint of shame is pushed away. And one of the ways they push it away is to push it onto other people. And so that's what's going on here, is the perpetuation of shame. But of course, if you said to a hijackal, well, you know, are you endeavoring to shame me because you've been shamed? They would say, I've never been shamed, but you deserve it.
And really, nobody deserves any shame.
No, it really is lethal. It's a terrible thing, and it permeates our culture. I'm actually writing a book right now called Armored by Shame.
Mm.
And it happens to victims and it happens to the people who are the perpetrators. They're armored by shame in different ways, and it's important to know that. But, you know, when you look at domestic violence, if we only have it as crimes of violence, meaning bodily harm, what about the daily wearing away of your self-esteem, your sense of self, the way that that is perpetrated on children who are looking at developing who they are and if they're welcome in the home? I mean, it is just vitriolic.
It's really sad. It's really tragic. And the fact that the law is not supporting or giving any indication is also then a problem system wide. So I'm really intrigued by your book cover, Armored by Shame. But what's the alternative here? How can we support these people?
Well, there are many ways. I mean, certainly in my work, when we take it apart and dissect where did the shame come from and how is it being perpetuated, then we can decide if that's okay with us or not. You know, would we like to change the messages we're sending ourselves and eradicate the messages we've been given, because we can look at who gave them to us and realize what the condition they were in, and we can say no to those messages and retrain ourselves to
Mm,
say, that was then, this is now. I don't have to live from this. Very difficult, because of the levels of brain growth during the first 25 years of our life, we take things in differently along that pathway of growth. And so some things are just emotionally embedded because we didn't even have language for them when we were little. And then we were very emotionally based anyway, so we thought, oh, we caused all this. Then we begin to have rational linear thought at a higher level. Then we can start to appeal to that. But when we're little, we don't have any experience to put that on. So by the time we get to be an adult, then we can go back and say, who gifted us with this shame business, and why, and what does it mean to me now, and how do I keep it back there with them, not bring it forward into my life anymore? But that's a big step. And then, of course, if you're in a relationship now where you are being financially abused, getting help is difficult
right.
because you're not allowed to spend money on getting help.
And if you're emotionally got this embedding of shame, you don't feel worthy of the help. You kind of believe this stuff. You don't even know that it's embedded. You're just acting out of this pattern of how I'm supposed to be according to this authority figure that you've had in your embedded in you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're constantly comparing yourself to other humans and coming up short because of the messages that you've been told. Well, nobody would want me anyway. No one would want to listen to me. I should be lucky if I have anybody's attention. And, you know, all of that got embedded in you when you were little, and you had no way to discern and discriminate whether those messages were accurate. And so it's a big task when you come to get help, because we have all of that to follow through on. And then we will attract people who see us as pre-groomed to accept abuse, and they will begin to reinforce those sad messages we received. And so it's all very familiar. And so we think, oh, it must be true. And the actual fact is, as you said, nobody deserves to be shamed. You know, just know you
Yeah.
deserve to take up space and draw breath on this earth and have respect to do it, as long as you don't do anything to make it so you demonstrate the lack of
Right.
ability to be respected.
It's so heartbreaking to hear that this is, people don't, they get these embedded messages and they don't have the ability to see themselves for the magnificence they are, for the deserving of happiness and equality and equity and respect. And I love that we're doing this show because we want to remind people, you deserve this. Like you say at every show, you deserve to take up space in this planet, in this world. You deserve to breathe the air, to have that happiness, the joy, and know that who you are, it flawed and all, is great. It's
Yeah,
perfect.
we're all flawed and
We
all.
are all
You know.
flawed, everyone, whether you've been embedded with shame or not. It doesn't matter. And you don't deserve to be shamed for any flaw, because
Well,
that's
the
what it
other
is to be human.
Yes, and the other side of those people who are shaming, they try to instill perfectionism. And
That's
so, you know, then you can never measure up because no human is ever perfect, but you're always running after that carrot that they're holding out. If only you did this, you'd be good enough. When you're dealing with abusers, they'll tell you, well, you should be doing this, and then I would approve of you. And when you do this that they would approve of, they've changed their mind and moved the marker.
Yeah.
So you're always chasing your tail in that regard. And so you can never be good enough. And that's a big deal. And obviously it's prevalent, Laura, because when I look at the podcast episodes, and there are hundreds of them now that I've done, one of the highest ranking ones, or the ones that have this in the title, are among the highest ranking and just not good enough. If it says that in the title, it's going to be a high ranking podcast.
That's wild. And interesting that we've got this as such a pervasive, it seems like it's festering, especially with COVID and just people feeling so hateful towards other people.
Yes, and so willing to speak up and say it, especially on social media. Like the things people say to each other, we covered that before recently, but the things people feel like they can judge and say and spew, and oh, it's horrible. It's really horrible.
Yeah. I mean, and I've always been a crusader for this on social media, is use social media for good, for social good, not as a venting place, not as a hate place,
Yes.
as a loving place, a place to spread love. Why not? I mean, I don't know anybody who in this world who can't use a little more love.
Yeah,
Why don't
I
we put
think you're
our
right.
energy there? I don't understand.
Yes. Yeah, a very good decision is to move toward the light, to move toward what makes the world go round in the best ways possible. Very, very important. Another piece of this is something I did on the podcast last night. I do the Save Your Sanity podcast every Monday night as a broadcast on YouTube and my Facebook group. And so I do the podcast, and then I accrue all of the comments. And when I finish the podcast, then we have a great conversation. People can ask questions, and they comment on whatever the topic was. And last night, the topic was recognizing reactive abuse.
Ooh,
And this is a super important topic, because what an emotional abuser will do is prod you to reach your tipping point. Then you will yell or scream or rage or call names or do whatever. And then they will accuse you of being the abuser. So when you react to the abuse, then they will accuse you of abuse. They'll call the police. They'll call Child Protective Services. They'll endeavor to get a protection order at the extreme because they pushed you to it. And, there you are. Like, yes, I did. I raged, I screamed, I called names, I made threats, whatever I did. But don't you care why? And no, they don't, because now you're the one who became the perpetrator of abuse, and you have been called out on it, and they're happy to do a smear campaign on you that you are the crazy one, you are the abusive one. It's an insidious, awful thing to have repercussions from reactive abuse.
ooh, that's icky. It's
It's horrible.
insidious. It's
Yeah.
horrible. Yes.
Yes. And so, learning to keep your mouth shut, even if you have scars on your tongue, is really important. I teach people, breathing techniques and things to do when abuse is coming at them in a verbal form, so that they can just go, oh, okay, there you go again. I do not have to respond to this. I do not have to react to this. I do not have to say anything. Just, okay. What I call is, it's turning on the Teflon. And when I talk about that, you just have to turn on your Teflon. Like, they're going to spew all of this, right? And so just let it slide off. It's hard. I know it's really, really hard, but it's less hard than getting into a reactive abuse situation where now you set yourself up with a narrative for the abuser to make you into the abused abuser.
Which is wild. It is wild. And Michael's saying really terrible situation. And thanks for being here, Michael, and for the love that we've been getting here. If you can relate to this, we're here for you to offer you those tools and podcasts. I love that you have the Save Your Sanity podcast. I'll put it back up here on the screen so people can look it up on YouTube on Monday nights with the conversation afterwards. So supportive. So the good news is you don't have to go through this all alone. If you're feeling badly and like you're being treated badly, you might just very well be. And it's not
Yeah.
just, it's not you, it's them. And they are out there. I mean, we've heard about it all over the world.
Absolutely. And what's on the screen right now, just saveyourSanityPodcast.com is where you'll find the podcast. So it's easy to find. But there are good episodes on what is verbal abuse, what is emotional abuse, so you can calibrate that. We don't want to think of ourselves as being abused. People do not want to say, my partner is an abuser. We don't want to name call the abuser. And particularly if we were raised in a home where there was abuse, it's all we know. And it's kind of familiar, even if it's comfortably uncomfortable. And so, we get into that thing where we don't want to call it abuse. No, I'm fine. And you make reasons, excuses, rationalizations, and justifications for the abuse. But one of the big things is to be able to actually come to say, yes, this is abusive. Yes, I am being abused. And be able to articulate the abuse. It's not I feel badly. It's they do this. They say this. This is the pattern. And when you can see that, then you can say, yes, I am being abused. I don't want to be a person who's abused. Now I need to take steps. And we have this I have a whole new system coming up that's going around a book that I'm working on, plus a whole course, and it's called Emerging Empowered, Breaking the Bonds of Emotional Abuse. Because I want people, if they're not sexually or physically being abused, in which case if they are, they should go directly to the police and they should leave or change their locks and have the person not able to have access to them. But if there isn't physical or sexual abuse, I want people to empower themselves while they're in the relationship. I help them to see what's going on, to try different strategies and techniques, to do things that actually allow them to gain some space, take up more space, get more sense of self, know what to say, know how to think about it, and then they can make a good decision about staying or leaving, and they leave and are emerging empowered rather than getting out of the relationship in a big rush with the clothes on our back. Oh, well, at least we're out. Yeah, you are, but now you are perhaps at your lowest point in your life. You don't know what's going to happen. Why not be emerging empowered, where you've dealt with the finances, you've dealt with the attorneys, you've dealt with the court, you've done it all from an empowered place as opposed to a fearful place. And that is the beginning of the rest of your life, and you will never go back. Not only go back to that person, you will never go back to that life, because you understand what it was, where it came from, what it looked like, and what to do about it.
And how long have you been helping people? Like, this is not your first rodeo.
No, this is since 1984. So it's a bit of a stretch.
It's a great stretch, but it means you know what you're doing and you know how to support people. You've seen them through, and there's support there for you. People out there who who don't feel like there's anything. If you've come across this show or one of the podcasts, there's hope, there's help, there's ways to emerge empowered. And it's not easy. I mean, it's challenging situation. And thank you, Rhoberta, for taking on such a challenge, but it's absolutely, like there are people out here today praying for someone like you to come into their lives. And so thank you.
Oh, thank you for the acknowledgement. It's just so important. What happened to me? I was born into a family like this. I married someone like this. I divorced someone like this. I had the ongoing joy of dealing with him while receiving no money or little to no money to help. And I've been there, done that. I have attracted hijack calls. I know it. I know what the internal dialogue is. I know what it takes to get out of it, as well as having a PhD in psychology, which really helps, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want people to suffer any longer than they need to before they find help. So I want to be that ubiquitous thing. That's why the YouTube channel and the podcast are there, so that people can find that. Like, I have people who say, they'll write and they'll say, you saved my children, and I thank you. And I've never heard from them before, but they'll say, I've listened to the podcast. I had a person say to me, the other day, in the last 2 weeks, I've listened to 65% of your Save Your Sanity podcast. Now, that's a lot of listening, because next week will be the 200th episode. So if you listen to 65% of them at 40 minutes, 45 minutes each show, you were really immersed in that, and you were finding something that you really needed to hear. Like last night's show, I've already received many comments because people didn't know what that was called. And yet they were caught in that reactive abuse, where they were made wrong for reacting to being abused. Right? So we need to know these things. We need to know that they exist. We need to be able to recognize them. We need definitions for them. Yesterday, somebody called and said, I just went back and listened to one of your gaslighting episodes, and finally it made sense to me what gaslighting sounds like, so that nobody can be defining my reality for me anymore. And, we think people have our best interest at heart. They'll say, well, let me tell you how it is. Yeah, well, maybe. But if you're with somebody who has hijackal traits, they're going to tell you what you think, what you feel, what you need, what you want. They're going to tell you that they know you better than they know you know yourself. And
Not
nobody,
true.
yes, no, nobody does that. Right? Do not ever take that with a grain of salt. If somebody tells you that they know you better than you know yourself, you just simply say, I doubt that.
Red flag.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Where's the red flag? Yeah. Yeah. There we go. Red flag for sure. And there's so many of them, Laura. There's just so many of them. And so, that's the reason that I do the podcast and the YouTube channel, is just, no matter where you are in the world, the podcast now reaches 91 countries, people in 91 countries. No matter where you are, when you finally realize these things have names, these things have patterns and cycles, and the behaviors can be identified, then you're on your way to saying, now I know what it is, and I knew it wasn't good.
Yeah.
Now what do we do, right? So with all of these things, like you were saying, people staying home during COVID, with being locked up with somebody who is probably blaming you for COVID in their heart. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be stuck in this hellhole, No, you get blamed for everything when you're with a hijackal, whether the weather is good or the IRS is bad or whatever, it's your fault.
Of course.
So
Can
imagine
do
being
no
with
good.
imagine being with them 24/7.
Right. And that's why I think what your person was saying, I watched 65% of your podcast. It's a way of reprogramming yourself to a new perspective, to a better, healthier place, to feel, emerge empowered. Every time you listen to this and you get a little insight and like, oh my God, that's what reactive abuse is. Oh my God, that's what gaslighting is. And then I know I've had to go back and listen to it 2 or 3 times, or we've had to have several conversations for me to get it. So it is powerful to listen over and over again to stuff that makes sense. And Michael's even saying that knowing who you're dealing with is key. It changed his life. Yeah. And knowing how to put on that Teflon and knowing who you are, so that you know that you're not, that person, and identifying people and running away from those hijackal types is really, really empowering.
Well, it is. And if you can't run, at least know how to say no to them within yourself, and then learn the communication skills to speak up in authentic, neutral ways.
Right.
When somebody says, here's what happened, and you can very neutrally say, actually, that's not what I remember happening. It's a step. Maybe you start by saying that inside, But then when you can speak it in a neutral way, so you're not pushing buttons, just say, no, that's not my recollection. You start to gain ground. You start to expand. You start to be able to say, I have the right to say what I remember, and I don't remember that. Right? And so you begin to take up space again. And a hijackal wants to marginalize and isolate you. And so when you start saying, no, I get to take up space. I don't have to have my arms at my sides and everything. I can actually take up more space. I can be really big, and I can,
I
and
can have
this
a
is
life
me.
and I
Yeah,
can be
this is
happy.
me. Yeah. And I get to be me, and you can't tell me who I am, and you can't tell me how I am. You can only tell me how I affect you. And that may or may not be true as to my intent, but it's absolutely true. It affects you that way. But then if you're with a hijackal, everything's your fault anyway, as I said. So then you begin to realize that you're in a no-win situation.
And so I love your strategies, and we talk about them here on the show. So please come back again or watch our past episodes of Transform Your Relationships live on our Facebook channel too. Thanks,
Yeah.
Rhoberta.
Oh, thank you, Laura.